fill in Dawn as needed. And if not, I'm always happy to circle back with her too. So let me formally call this meeting of the PCA Workforce Council to order. I just want to make an announcement at the top that today's meeting is being recorded and it will be posted and available online after the conclusion of the meeting today. Today's agenda, just to quickly go through what we're going to cover. We're going to do some welcome and introduction. I think it's important that we do that not only for our existing members, but so many new members have joined us, and they've joined in the throes of some of our busiest work. So I think it's important we take a step back and just all continue to put faces to names and do some introductions, also in terms of staffing. And then secondly, we'll cover a summation of the collective bargaining agreement that just wrapped up. I'm going to ask Heather to take the lead in that after I give some opening remarks and context setting. The third agenda item is discussion of council priorities for state fiscal year 23. We'll then have an update on the 2023 Employer Forum, a membership update from Melissa, an opportunity for public comments. And my understanding is that we will have someone who's signaled to us that they would like to provide some public comments. And then I will ask for a motion to go into executive session for a debrief of the collective bargaining agreement and our strategy moving forward. We'll come back to do an adjournment and we'll enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Very nice sunny day out there. So with that, I guess we'll start with introductions. This is my first formal meeting, but I think I know everyone by now. My name is Claudio Gualtieri. I lead the Health and Human Services Policy and Planning Division at OPM. And I have with me some amazing colleagues that work with the Workforce Council and on other human services policy issues with me. I serve as chair of the Workforce Council, a duty that I took over from David Gutchin beginning in February of this year. And I'm really excited to do this work. I'm sure some of you have heard it because it's sort of the alpha and omega of my experience in long-term care. One of the first policy issues I ever worked on in Connecticut was when the state director, Brenda Kelly at the time, basically said, here, long-term care is a big issue for seniors and we need someone to work on it, and just threw me a bunch of books and stuff to read up on. And since then, I've had the great pleasure of working closely with a lot of people here on our rebalancing journey. And it's hard to believe that when I first started this work, a majority of long-term services and supports actually were in nursing homes. We were at 54, 55% not that long ago. And just the rapid change that's more aligned with where consumers want to be has been amazing. Nothing short of amazing, but we know that those things don't just happen. It happens because of people like all of you on this council, and amazing leadership from advocates who are always kind of pushing the envelope and making sure that new programs are up and operational. And so I'm thrilled to be here now in a capacity where we can institute and oversee some of that work to continue to maintain our good progress on rebalancing and consumer choice. And with that, I think I'll turn it over first to my immediate colleagues. So I'll go to Melissa first, and then I will introduce Heather and give some context of Heather's new role.
You all know me, so I'm Melissa Morton. I have been serving as staff to the PCA Workforce Council. And with that, I think I will turn it back over to Claudio to bring in Heather.
Great, thanks, Melissa. And for those of you who are meeting Heather just relatively recently, we've brought Heather Ferguson Hull on. We stole her away from Representative Abercrombie and the Human Services Committee at the General Assembly to do this important work of being the main staff point of contact for the Workforce Council. So the role that Melissa had previously been playing, we're going to slowly transition that off to Heather. I think in order to help with that transition, we're all of the belief, Heather and I and Melissa, that the best way to learn up a new position is to sort of do it on training wheels. So with that, I will ask that when council or any members of the public have questions that you would have normally directed to Melissa, please send those directly to Heather, but let's keep a CC in the short term for Melissa so that she can kind of provide that instant check and help and support and guiding Heather through the process of transitioning. And Heather will be taking over a lot of the day-to-day responsibilities, but fear not, we will maintain Melissa's important role as a supervisory function for Heather and for ongoing, like when specialty expertise is needed in collective bargaining and with other key inflection points of the Workforce Council. So she's kind of a half step out, but we'll keep her in for purposes of this very important and sensitive items that we come across. So now why don't we go around to our others? Why don't we start with Fran, and after you introduce yourself, Fran, you pick the next person to speak.
Okay, I'm Fran Seinish. I live in Stratford. I am retired now, but I wear a lot of volunteer hats. I'm on the Advisory Council of Southwest Connecticut Agency on Aging. I'm a Rotarian in Stratford. I also, this is where I met Claudio. I'm an AARP volunteer. When I started at Disability Resource Center, which is now Access Independence. So I got to know Eileen Healy, and I did a lot of things there. I was on MFP, so I met Dawn, and right now trying to keep my hats in the ring, and I'm very happy to be on this committee. My adult son, who I was kidding before is my IT person, has a disability, and he is on the PCA waiver. So I know a little bit about it, and that's it. Who shall we take next? How about the other Fran? There isn't too many times where there's two Frans in a group.
Thank you. I think I've spoken to you quite a few times on the phone, Fran.
Yes.
So I'm Fran Mazzarola. I work for CIL. It's kind of our name now, but it is an acronym, and it stands for Corporation for Independent Living. I have worked for CIL for almost 35 years, and I have had lots of different capacities while working for CIL. I do administer 2 state programs. One is Loans for Accessibility, which is kind of for the private sector, people that are living in their homes that need accessibility modifications. It is a forgivable loan program. And I'm happy to say that we've been administering it since the late 90s. And also Money Follows the Person, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. So I administer that on behalf of the state as well. And some really great programs. I'm excited to be a part of this. I also do, one of my coworkers retired back in November, and I took on his role of property manager. So we own quite a few group homes up in the state of Massachusetts, and I do property management for all those group homes. So I'm a little crazy, and I apologize. Trying to figure this all out and make it all work. So we've got a lot of exposure with lots of different pieces of accessibility, and I've worked with many people, so I'm aware of their PCA needs and how those needs have affected their lives. So that's my story. Thanks for having me. Oh, I have to pick somebody. I don't know everybody's name, so I'm going to apologize. I might have to go with initials. Who is PS? Peg.
Peg.
There we go.
That would be me. Good afternoon, everyone, on this absolutely gorgeous day. I am Peg, Shugru is my maiden name, Szymanski, and I am new to the committee, to the council. And might I just say I am in awe of the meetings, the negotiations, the knowledge that I've witnessed over the past few months. It's been an incredible process to see, and happy for everyone and humbled by the experience, frankly. I am a retired former employee for 38 and a half years of Eversource, and loved my job, but I also love retirement. And I had the opportunity to become a part of this council based on my experiences as a mom. Again, this seems to be a common thread of an adult son with disabilities, and my experience in participating, hiring, managing as a consumer employer, with my son. And I absolutely look forward to what's coming up in the year ahead. So that's me, and I will turn it over to, let's see, how about, let's see, Carrie?
And Peg, before we let you go, I have to say, coming from the AERP world of things, we don't call it retirement, we call it preferment. You get to do the things you prefer to do now. You still will work and you still be very active.
Oh, that is absolutely true. Thank you, Claudio.
I'm going to keep that in mind, when I'm thinking of my future preferment years, decades from now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Fillick. I'm a program manager with the Department of Social Services. I know a few individuals on the call, but just to give some background, I have worked in the community options unit within DSS, which we work on Money Follows the Person, community first choice, some other rebalancing initiatives, our new program, CHESS, the Housing Engagement and Support Services. I've worked in this unit for all of my career at DSS, just taking on new and different responsibilities as I've gone through the years. Happy to be here, a part of the group, and observing it all, and happy to be around a group of people who are so passionate about what they do. So thank you for having me here today. I will pass it to Adam.
Thank you, Carrie. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam. I am relatively new. I think I think I was the first of the sort of new wave of council members. I am a staff attorney at the State of Connecticut's Office of the Healthcare Advocate, which is the essentially the health insurance ombuds program for advocating on behalf of consumers who are having issues with their health benefits, sort of whatever those benefits may be, and whoever the payer is. So everything from Husky up through all the commercial insurance, employer sponsored, and Medicare. In this role, I don't do a lot with the long-term care world, but earlier in my career, I worked for an independent living center based out of Rochester, New York. I was the lobbyist and advocate in and around Albany, and in that role, I worked quite a bit on New York's managed long-term care system, advocating for maximizing community benefits and minimizing institutionalization. From really, what I took away from that work is sort of looking at long-term care from a civil rights lens, from a lens of the more that we can do to support people's independence and dignity and equality and equal access to everything through these programs. So I'm very glad to be here. It's good to meet you all. And I will pick Kathy.
Thanks, Adam. My name is Kathy Flaherty. I'm an attorney. I'm the executive director of Connecticut Legal Rights Project. We provide legal services to people who are eligible for mental health services from the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. I'm a governor's appointee to the council, and I think I've been on since either 2014 or 2015, when my predecessor at CLRP, Jan Van Tassel, retired. And I think she put my name into the mix to be part of this workforce council. And I've really enjoyed it, and making a lot of great connections to people and seeing how the system just basically does its work so that people can have great lives in the community. So I will pass it to Lucas.
There we go. Hi, something might have occurred earlier. I'm Lucas Sunwall. I'm relatively new. I think it was last year that I became a board member upon recommendation of Mary Caruso. I don't know how many people know Mary. I myself am a law student, as I was saying before, at Quinnipiac University School of Law, hoping to pursue public interest, specifically disability rights law. It's sort of difficult to see here, but I have a major physical disability, so I use a wheelchair, so I sort of know the ins and outs of this system, and I am myself a PCA consumer, so I sort of have experience with that and sort of the logistics and difficulties involved. So I'm very glad to be a member of the board, and I'm trying to remember who was saying it before, but as a new member, definitely was humbled by being in the negotiations where didn't know what I was getting into, but it was very, instructive to sit through those and basically listen to all the very extremely intelligent and also talented people that are on the board or council that were navigating that process. So I'm very happy to be here. Oh, and I'm trying to see who else hasn't gone. Is Georgia gone yet? No. That's to Georgia.
Thank you, Lucas. Well, my name is Georgia Masari. I work for the Department of Social Services. I work alongside Carrie and Dawn. I'm a health program supervisor in the unit, and I'm mainly working on the CFC program, and I work directly with our fiscal intermediary, Allied. Prior to working for the Department of Social Services, I actually have about 9 years here. Previously, I used to work in what we call our medical operations unit, so more on the behind the scenes operational side. So I used to work with Carrie and Dawn back then too, helping implement some of these wonderful initiatives that the department has had. Prior to that, I do have experience working at a psychiatric residential treatment facility for children within DCF. So I'm very happy to kind of come back to this program side of things. I took a little break, but I'm really excited to be here with all of you guys. So with that, I will pass it along to Sheldon. I don't think Sheldon's gone yet.
Yes, hi, I'm just a guest. I'm here for public comment, but my name is Sheldon Taubman. I am an attorney at Disability Rights Connecticut, but only for 9 months. Before that, I was at Legal Services for 30 years, where pretty much my area was Medicaid, and mostly on behalf of people who are seniors or people with disabilities and a lot of long-term care issues. And in that role, I actually sued the Department of Social Services many, many times, and I hope improved access to services a little bit along the way. I'm now the litigation attorney at DRCT. Thanks.
I think we're down to Denise and Dawn, I think.
I think you're right, Melissa. All right, I'll jump Dawn. I don't want
Go for it.
I don't want you to be left out, but you're gonna wrap it all up in a nice nutshell.
I got the bow.
So for many of you, I've met before in the negotiations. Denise Palladino. I am the self-determination director for the Department of Developmental Disabilities. and I wear many hats in my position. I've been with the state for 25 years. And so basically my team are case managers, supervisors, and brokers who are assigned cases for individuals who self-direct their services. Some overlap in terms of dual supports with DDS and CFC. So I've gotten the pleasure of working with the folks like Dawn over at DSS. And we also oversee cases that transition out of MFP, money follows a person, to our department. So, you know, I got the luxury of getting to know some of the services outside of our department. And I also work with folks in our BSP program, which is our behavioral services program for DDS, which are our counterpart DCF. It's individuals, children under the age of 18 who have clinical behavioral needs. So I also get to work with our sister agency, DCF. And on top of that, I employ 3 individuals who are consumer employers in our department who work directly with me and on my team, self-advocate coordinators who assist our department with our mission, doing trainings. We're connected with Connecticut Family Support Network. They do our onboard training for all our employees. They do our provider training. So it's a pleasure to work with my folks. And so I have very in-depth role when it comes to self-direction. So both within the case manager side, helping folks manage their waivered support dollars, as well as individuals who have those dollars to manage their services. And I'll call on Dawn Lambert.
Thanks, Denise. So, hi everybody, Dawn Lambert. I co-lead the Community Options Unit at the Department of Social Services, Division of Health Services. I've been primarily responsible for rebalancing. Now I'm in the Department of Social Services, either as a contractor or now as an actual state employee since 2004, primarily responsible for rebalancing. So been involved in moving people out of institutions since actively since 2001. So now 21 years working on things like this, basically ever since the Olmstead decision in 1999. So Claudia, I think it's back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn. Appreciate that. And Heather, I know I sort of preempted your official introduction, so I don't know if you want to just say a few words before we move to the next topic.
Sure. Thank you, Claudio, and thank you for that lovely introduction. It's great to meet people formally. I've had the pleasure of getting to see some of you during some of the negotiation process, and also re-meet some of you that I knew in my previous role as clerk of the Human Services Committee and Representative Abercrombie's aide. And I'm just really excited to be here assisting the council. And as Claudio said, having Melissa hand things off the warm handoff, and that she'll please, as Claudio said, you know, please include both Melissa and me on all your communications, and that way we'll make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible. So thank you, and I look forward to working with you all.
Great, thank you. So I will start the second item on our agenda, which is a wrap up, but I'm going to tip it to Heather in a bit to give some more of the details. I just want to kind of give the 360 view of what the big objectives are when we went into the collective bargaining, and what I suspect they will be going into our next session, which is going to start in pretty short order. So, I mean, starting out as the representatives for consumer employers in the state, I think our objectives were very much guided by 3 principal goals. The first, of course, to promote choice and allow people that opportunity to direct their own care in the least restrictive, most appropriate setting. So it's like Olmstead 101 has got to be the North Star of all these negotiations and the purpose of our being. So I think we took that to heart in everything we did. I think we were reflective every time we put offers on the table, or when we tried to present ideas, we were mindful of what does this do for consumer choice? What does this do for maintaining maximum autonomy and direction of the individuals in their own care? The second big thing I think is you can't execute on an Olmsted mission if you don't have the workforce, a high quality workforce, a well-trained workforce, and an available workforce. So I think a big prong of this last session was about what are those incentives and economic opportunities that we can put in place to sustain and grow the healthcare workforce. That means quality and ensuring consumers could easily navigate and find PCAs, including backup. If their PCA has to leave or switch jobs, that there's a relatively easy way for them to find quality replacement employees or backup emergency employees. And I think in terms of retaining this workforce, what could we do by way of skills enhancement to make this a career path so that people stay as a PCA? Don't just do this as a short-term project, but there's opportunity for growth and sustainability here. The third big thing is, and we touched on this at the top, it's got to be our rebalancing goals. This is one of the programs that at a systemic level, Connecticut has chosen that we want to make sure that the options available and the care you receive aligns with where the consumers want to be. And so it has been, this program has been one of the key impetuses for us to change that narrative and allow people as a right to have a chance to live in the community, remain as independent as they so choose, and to really have a lot of say over who provides that care and what are the terms of the services and the care delivery. So, and I think from those big objectives, we did a lot of good work this last session. And I want to turn it now to Heather that can go through some of the nuts and bolts of the details of what that meant in terms of a specific contract. But I also wanted to make sure we did that in the context of why we're here in the first place.
Thank you, Claudia. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen to show you just a little quick PowerPoint slide. So bear with me. So hopefully you all can see that. The blue, is that showing, Claudia? Fantastic. Okay. So, you know, I don't want to read it through line by line, and I know that Melissa had sent this out as well, but just some of the highlights, basically that, you know, it's a 2-year agreement. It expired actually back in June of 2021. This will go through June 30th of 2023, and there'll be 3 points of wage increases, one upon ratification, which happened, fortunately. The agreement was signed on April 11th. It went through the Appropriations Committee on April 27th. The General Assembly approved the whole shebang on May 3rd, and then the governor signed it on the 7th. So the wage increases, we understand, are going to be able to go into effect as of May 8th, which is great. And, you know, we've been working hard on making sure those happen. So as I said, we started with $16.25 for PCAs, quick bump up to $17.25. Then on July 1st, goes to $17.75, and then January 1st, go to $18.25. Similar 3 points of minimum wage increase for respite workers, $16.30, then $16.72, $17.25. Then the GWA for folks who are making above those minimums. For hourly wage workers, 2% upon ratification. Then in July, another 2% for 4% total. And for per diem workers, because their methodology is based on very specific methodology, payment methodology, they don't have a different minimum wage, but they're getting the GWIs, the 4% upon ratification, and the additional 4% in July. And so wonderful new benefits that didn't exist before. Lump sum payments that folks are going to be getting a 6% lump sum payment once it's been approved by the legislature. Now we have to go through the CMS approval process, and that'll be on total earnings from April 1st through April 1st of 21 to March 31st of 2022. Based on 6% for each consumer employer that the PCA works with. Paid time off, that they're going to start to be able to accrue that start accruing that, starting with the federal approval, which is great, up to at a rate of 0.025 per hour, that they can earn up to 40 hours per year with some carryover. And then for the per diem, it's a comparable methodology, but it basically they can earn up to 5 shifts off per year at a similar accrual rate. Same thing, the healthcare premium assistance that didn't exist before. So it'll be 6% of the PCA's pay that will be paid semi-annually. They have to show that they aren't able to be covered through a spouse or through Husky or Covered Connecticut. And then that will be a cap of $5,000 on a premium assistance card that they'll get semi-annually. And then the training fund, as Claudia said, it's so important that we continue to support the workforce and grow their skills, grow their professional development. And so the $600,000 was the amount prior. And so there'll be $600,000 going forward for orientation, but an additional $150,000 for skills enhancement, which is wonderful. So I'm going to move on to just a couple highlights of things that were maintained from the previous agreement. Go ahead, Claudia.
Heather, if I could just step in to just set expectations for anyone that may be listening to this afterwards, is that throughout the whole contract and the agreement, because this program is administered through Medicaid, there is a little bit of a process in place where CMS approval is required for all of this. So the first necessary piece is getting ratification and legislative approval, but we know that our agencies are working diligently to make that next piece, which will trigger these actually going into effect, which is ultimately getting CMS approval for each of those items. So we are working with deliberate speed, but some of that is outside our control, and the federal government's going to have to weigh in and give the final go-ahead on some of this.
And thanks for highlighting that, Claudio. And for those of you who are new to the council or anybody who might be watching, CMS is for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which is the federal approval. So. All right. Any questions? Actually, I'll go back to that slide. Any questions on that slide before I go on to the next one? Okay. So the slide here just shows a little bit about what was maintained, the really important things that holiday pay for the 6 holidays that they PCAs will get a time and a half for working on those 6 holidays. There's no cap on wages. That's really the consumer employer's discretion within their budget, that they can give wage increases as they see fit. Then the orientation stipends stay the same, $48 for the 3-hour mandatory orientation. Workers' comp has been maintained for PCAs and consumer employers, and that they have that protection of the workers' compensation. And then finally, probably most importantly, that the consumer employer rights are maintained, that it's all about the self-direction and making sure that they have the right to hire, train, supervise, all the important things about their rights being maintained. And so that's huge, and that continues to be in place. So any additional questions? All right. And before I go, I pass it back to Claudio. I know on our agenda we talked about a couple other things. I know Melissa is going to talk about because collective bargaining is going to be starting again this fall. Will be that'll in September will be the notice of intent to commence bargaining a successor agreement. But just to let people know that Melissa and I have been working on a memo for consumer employers to sort of summarize a lot of the changes and to, answer, hopefully that'll answer most questions. And then also an implementation timetable that we've been working on that we'll be posting to the Workforce Council website as well. So
and that's something that we definitely want the subject matter experts and the council members to weigh in on. So we'll take a first crack, but welcome any changes, edits. We want to make sure we get it right. And it's a lot of this is technical, so we will tap into that expertise.
Claudio and Heather, I just wanted to point out that the 2 state agencies, DSS and DDS, did discuss the wage implementation piece with the FIs being effective, the new rate as of Sunday, May 8th. Because the 2 FIs have a different pay period, Sunset Shores will have to do like a retro payment for that May 8th because that date falls in a previous pay period, just to kind of let people know. And also the FIs are looking for a general communication just to be issued out to employers of record around this so that folks understand why there's a difference in their paycheck. There'll be a differential, obviously. So Dawn and I have been working on a draft communication, a joint communication for both. It's just a general, just to give to the FI so they can issue this out to employers so that they're aware. Should we hold off? How quickly will this bigger communication be drafted or?
So it is drafted. What we
Okay.
took what we did with the last collective bargaining agreement and updated it. So Heather finished it. It just went to Claudio. I'm sure he hasn't even seen it in his inbox yet because it went to him this morning. So it's the same style as the Q&A. I'm sorry, go ahead, Claudio.
No, I was going to say, I noticed that it came in my inbox. I have not had a chance to read it yet, but I can commit to do so today, or I'm happy to have a simultaneous review with the subject matter experts, and then we can consolidate all feedback at once.
Okay, so if that's okay with you, Claudio, then we can immediately circulate the draft memo for everybody to look at. We can do that immediately following this meeting.
So we'll hold off then on our communication, that just general piece about the wages, or do you think that should be separate? And this is
Well,
more.
why don't we swap?
Okay, that's perfect.
Because then your wage communication can go out right away. It's probably very short, where ours reviews the whole CBA. So it might be yours goes out and ours can go out another time, and we can so it's fine. I don't think it has to be one or the other.
Yeah, I just think we need deadlines. I mean, for us, like, we need to get the communication out. So I know we have different responsibilities that overlap, but for us, I mean, I think tomorrow by noon, we need to get something over to the FIs, Denise. And so if you guys have time to take a quick peek, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll send it right now while we're on this meeting. You guys could take a look at it.
And you know what? I'll hit you back with our version.
Sounds
And
good.
but our version can certainly wait. If you want to just get a targeted wage piece out, that might be the way to go.
And what I did is Dawn and I looked at the whole CBA and the things that have changed, and just basically indicated that more information would be coming, but that the wage piece is going. And then I included the stipulations of the new CBA in there, like your PowerPoint information. So you just take a look at it, give me your feedback, everyone, and then okay.
Yeah, just to connect the dots, super important that they get it, because don't forget, 200 new people are doing this every month. They're hiring people right now.
Yep.
And they don't know what rate they're hiring at. So there's so for us to get something out immediately is super important.
Agreed.
All right, sounds good. And I actually think that the duplication reinforces the message anyway, so I don't see a problem with that. Thanks for you guys taking the initiative and doing that other piece ahead of time. I guess it worked out really well. Melissa, I think you're on for agenda item 3, but I don't know if you're in the middle of. Are you set with sending that email? I didn't want to distract you. Our next item on council priorities for FY23.
Yeah, I can jump right in. I can multitask. So just before we move on from collective bargaining wrap up, I did just want to add that one of the things Heather and I and Claudio talked about at the end of the last bargaining agreement, this last round of collective bargaining, was that there are probably a lot of ways that we could do some process improvement in terms of gathering council feedback, keeping you guys in the loop. How can we, within our legal rights, make sure we know what our consumer employers' view on certain topics are? I mean, it's very tricky because they can't be at the bargaining table and we can't share what's spoken about at the bargaining table, but that doesn't preempt us from at some point over the summer or before bargaining begins, trying to get a sense of what things are important to consumer employers, what we might need to be raising. But more to the point for this is just that we want you to know, we know a lot of you jumped in midstream. You missed the pre-planning part where we went through the old agreement and we came up with what our asks were. And then just the way that bargaining went this time around, it became very heavy on the financial piece and not so much on some of the other asks that we had to shore up implementation of the agreement, the running of our labor management and fund committees, things of that nature. Some other consumer rights that we wanted to tweak. Things got dropped this time. So I think for a lot of members, it felt like there was a lot of talk happening outside of negotiations, and consumer council input wasn't really needed or being taken. And it honestly was because once we hit the economic negotiations, the role of the council becomes very limited, right? We don't make the big money decisions. So we make our recommendations at the beginning, and I think a large swath of folks on this council missed that because you weren't on the committee at the beginning when we were doing that. And then it hits a point where we have to back down, and the secretary of OPM and the governor and his staff and are doing more of the negotiating about what we can offer in an economic package. So just to let you know, anticipate some outreach from Heather and I on that. And that brings us into item number 3, council priorities for 2023. One of the things that a couple council members raised to me during this process was that when they started, even though talking to me on the phone and having an informal orientation was helpful, they really would have liked something more formal. Or some sort of binder that had all the materials they need. A who's who. Claudio had a great idea of coming up with like a face sheet that has the council pictures and our name and a bio, so that when somebody starts, they can have a real orientation where we can hand over some historical documents that orient people to the work of the council, something that gives them a snapshot of members. Honestly, it might be helpful for all of us to even have that list of members and our pictures so we can get used to each other and our roles. So that's something that we're going to look at putting together a durational new member orientation subcommittee and combine it with the work of the bylaw development committee, because it seemed to be quite honestly, it was the same people who were interested in both. But if you're interested in being part of a work group to develop a new member orientation, please reach out to Heather and I and let us know, because we'll be kicking that off shortly, because we want to get that up and running, because we do have a couple vacancies that we're hoping to fill. So looking for input on that. The other thing that we talked about internally was wondering if you all had interest in setting aside a half day at some point over the summer to engage in a strategic planning session. The council has a lot in statute that we don't do, that we get so bogged down in the actual collective bargaining and the day-to-day administration and troubleshooting that pops up because we're managing the contract, that some of the responsibilities we have to consumer employers, we haven't been able to really focus on. And also getting back to that whole thing about process improvement for collective bargaining, and how can the council communicate better with consumer employers, and how can we really maximize the resources on our group for the benefit of the consumer employers that we're meant to represent. So would folks have interest in us putting together a half-day strategic planning session to just figure out, really reset the mission and goal of the council, where we want to go, how we want to refocus our values as well, and set some goals and objectives that we can actually work toward, and then even dig a little deeper and develop some concrete strategies to reaching those goals. I think we've always missed that piece because it was like, hurry up, form a council, hurry up, negotiate a contract. So I think we're in a good place to take that step back now and really think about a long range plan. And I think it would be good to do it prior to negotiations starting, so that we're going into it very focused. So if everybody could nod or let me know what they think. That's great. So we will work to poll folks and see if we can't pull together some kind of half-day session and talk about what would be most helpful to all of you in that session as well, so that it's a real productive use of your time and not one of those things where you wish you had 3 hours of your life back. So before I move on, is there anything else on that before I jump into talking about a potential employer forum? Great. We're cruising right through. So for those of you who are new, historically, the PCA Workforce Council would hold every fall a consumer employer forum. And we tried to rotate around the state. So we did one in North Central Connecticut, one in South Central Connecticut. I think we do one in Southwestern Connecticut. There was one before I started, but we definitely owe Western and Eastern Connecticut an employer forum. We invite people across the whole state. Every consumer employer gets invited, and it is really a full day event that is, for those of you who've participated, you can back me up on this. It's super cool. The consumer employers, we send out an invite to all of them. They come to the event, which is physically, which is why we try and rotate so that folks can get there. This year we could talk about if we want to do it virtually somehow, or if we would like to resume in person. We haven't had a forum in 2 years because of the pandemic. But it seems like with a new collective bargaining agreement and with another one about to start, it would be a great time to re-engage with our consumer employers and figure out a way to pull them all together. The day always has food. The FIs make themselves available all day. They introduce themselves to the consumer employers so that employers have faces to put with the names that they're used to dealing with. We try and find out from the employers and from case managers out in the field. Usually our council members help us kind of get a sense of what are the issues our employers really need to hear about, what do they want to talk about. EVV the last couple years was the hot topic, and so we had live EVV demos, we had where people could go and ask questions, we had council members speak, we've had consumer employers speak. So it really is an event meant to engage the consumer employers, not only to educate them on areas where they would like more information, but to give them an opportunity to network with each other and for us to hear from them. And, you know, for me, I've always left those days feeling energized and ready to put in the hard work. So what do folks think about resuming the employer forums this fall? And I think I put 2023 forum because I wasn't sure if we wanted to do it this fall, which I would like to do, or if you wanted to postpone until 2023. I would love if we could do something either virtually or in person this fall while we're in the midst of negotiating or on the cusp of negotiating, to get some valuable feedback before we actually enter the negotiations this time around. But I defer to all you. I'd love to hear thoughts on if we should do this again, and if we should, what are thoughts on in-person versus virtual?
I mean, I think it's worth doing it again. Now it depends on how many people would be showing up. I don't know. I'm fine with either virtual or in person. I don't know if more senior people on here have found that you're more likely to get more people by doing it on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams versus if you make it in person, or if there's a way you can combo it. So in other words, that there's an option to do both in person and on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. Again, I don't have a preference, so I'm open to either.
Thank you, Lucas. And I wish, you know, one thing we could look into is having CTN cover it. They covered so that it's streamed. That doesn't allow interaction, but since I have no idea how to live stream and allow interaction, but that is something that we could certainly look into. They had covered our first and second employer forums, so that's a really great idea, Lucas, to look into that again. Anybody else have thoughts? This is something we could also talk about offline and get a email chain rolling on this too with some initial thoughts. Fran Sinish, you had?
Yeah, I'm all for in person. And people, but if you wanted to do virtual, we need to do Zoom, not Microsoft, because I don't know how many people have Microsoft. We're all computer here in this house, and I had a lot of trouble. But I would love to see an in-person thing. It sounds wonderful.
Can we do an outside event? So people, maybe that's a way of cutting the difference and feeling a little bit safer if we do an outdoor event in an open, maybe public spot like Elizabeth Park or equivalent in different parts of the state.
That would be great.
That's a great idea, Claudio.
Just would have to have a rain date.
Yeah.
Or big tents.
There are outdoor, you've got me thinking, because now I can think of some outdoor places where during the pandemic we've had to resort to having things, and it's worked out very well. And it might not be fully enclosed, but there's a canopy or, so that's great. Peg, I think I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was curious as to the number of participants you typically have at the events.
Sure. So we have between, I would say 80 and 125, depending on the year it was 80. It was driving rain. I mean, Denise, I think you went that year and you were about to go play a concert after that, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
It was ridiculous. So that gets back to the make sure we're covered. Yeah.
I like the idea of doing it in the summer or, near fall and having it in a covered pavilion. I think that the message is the medium, and I think having that face-to-face contact would just be terrific. If you can do a combo for the folks who can't get there, better still. So, yeah.
Great. So it seems like there's interest. So Heather and I can get the ball rolling and then pull you guys in, when we get down to here's what we're thinking for location. Please, if you right now, as you think of things, what should our agenda look like? Feel free to send us topic areas, ideas, be creative. If you want to know what we did in the past, our last two forums are on the PCA Workforce Council website. So please go on our website and you can see the agenda, the location, all the materials, everything is up there. So if you want to get a sense of what we've done in the past, it's all right there for you to take a look at. But we're open to anything you're hearing that you think consumer employers, A, that might engage them and get them to want to come, and B, that are points of information that they might want from us. And then more importantly, what might we need to get from them so that we can better represent them in bargaining next time around. and best serve them, and how can we do that in a creative and fun way that doesn't sound like we're running the world's most boring focus group. So that's I think, Claudio, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go to membership update. I think that's me too. Okay.
Go for it.
So, all right, membership update. We're doing great, but we stalled out. We had a lot of momentum going. Where we are left now is we have four, well, I will say we have 4 vacancies, but I guess we really only have 3. We have somebody pending, but we need a member of an organization representing the interests of elderly consumers. We need somebody to fill that position. We need somebody, and that would be the House Majority Leader would make that appointment. Right now, that's Representative Rojas. We need a member of an organization or an individual representing the interests of consumers with physical disabilities. That appointment would be made by the President Pro Tem of the Senate. So right now that's Looney. And then we need a member of an organization representing the interests of consumers with developmental disabilities. We have somebody pending for that one. But I think that one might be running into a hiccup. So that would be appointed by Senate Majority Leader Duff. So those are the vacancies that we currently have. So we have 1 in each category. We would love to try and expand the diversity of our council, trying to get more of a consumer voice on the council where possible. And we really just want to make sure our council is representative of the consumer employers that we're supposed to be representing. So if we could keep that in mind, very open to recommendations that you might have for appointments. I know some of you have been really good about sending names my way. And I do reach out to whoever is, I mean, that's how we got our new members. So it's from prior members sending recommendations. So just put your thinking caps on, let me know, and we would be more than happy to talk to the individual, and if it seems like a good fit, send that name up to our secretary, who would then be the person who would be appropriate to pass the name on to the correct legislative appointee. The other thing is, they can do, we've also had people who, we can take that extra step, but, legislators make appointments on their own too. Fran went straight to the legislator, and you know what? It went much faster that way. So, sending them to Heather, actually, I'm sorry, sending them to Heather for a quick convo to just make sure that people understand what the council is. Not everybody's fire gets lit by collective bargaining. So we like to be very upfront that this is not an advocacy group, that we don't have any say in Medicaid program and policy, and it's not a group that's going to advocate to change.
Uh-oh. I think she must have froze, and maybe she's right near here. I might have her come over to my screen if hers doesn't come on so we can share screen.
Yes, well, we definitely should get her over, because I feel like she was winding up for what
Yes,
it is. So I was getting a little depressed about what we don't do, but we do
I'll have her switch. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Melissa. Hold on.
That's okay. Just take my headphones.
Well, my Teams has ended the meeting, so we are adjourned. Sorry about that. It just completely shut down. It was done. So all I was going to say is we like to make clear to new members who think they're joining an advocacy group and that this is like going to be the driving, because that created some frustration for previous members, that they really wanted to advocate for change in Medicaid policy and change in, the way the programs work and that's not this group. So I try to make it very clear to people that this is really a group that is established solely with the purpose of negotiating a collective bargaining agreement and then implementing that collective bargaining agreement and making sure the terms of the collective bargaining agreement are upheld. And that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people like to be in the weeds on that stuff, and some people that's not what they're up for. So all that to say, it's very helpful if you send potential candidates to Heather and I first, because then we can explain all that and vet their interest. And we have had people say, no, thank you, but good luck to you all. So that is how that would move forward. And that's all I have on membership updates. Please, if we can drum up some more members. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say, even beyond, maybe you don't have a name in hand, but if you have an idea, a tactic, a strategy, where should we go? Who are the thought leaders that can help connect us to a more diverse and inclusive council membership and help build out our ranks? Please do that. If there are forums, meetings, events that you host where you're willing to make an announcement or have us come in to make announcements, that's helpful too. Anything we can do to kind of pound the pavement and cast a wide net, we would. And I see we have a very productive council because we're getting instant feedback on some of our work. So I feel like it's a working session too, which is awesome. I will move us now to item 6 on our agenda, and we do have public comment. I think Sheldon introduced himself previously, and Sheldon, thank you for hanging on and being part of all the meeting to be part of the public comment. So with that, I just want to turn the floor over to you. Any comments you'd want to make?
Thank you, Claudio. And it was interesting. I was glad to hear, because some of the stuff I didn't really know was going on. So I'm with Disability Rights Connecticut. We are a young organization, only 5 years old. We used to be the state agency, Office of Protection and Advocacy, but we became a nonprofit back then. I've only been there, as I said earlier, about 9 months. And we represent people with all kinds of disabilities. That's our charge under our federal mandate and our grants, and that's exactly what we do. I'm a little concerned about what I'm about to say, given Melissa's warning, which is that this group is not in any way an advocacy group, and the very narrow definition I just heard of the group makes it sound like I'm kind of wasting my time, but I think individually, several of you will really care about what I'm talking about. So the group, obviously is focused on rebalancing, which is a very important thing that I've been working on for decades in Connecticut as well, like Claudio and others. Very, dear to my heart. And somebody today said that, access to PCAs and PCA waiver program is a right. So what I'm going to talk about sort of challenges that. What's the reality? Some of you are aware, and some of you, I think, run the Connecticut Home Care Program for Elders, which is very much like the PCA waiver program. It has the exact same income eligibility standard. It has the same level of care requirement that you'd otherwise go into a nursing home without the services. It is very, very similar. That program serves thousands of people every year and does a fantastic job. And it has no waiting list. So if you meet the criteria, you get on the program and you therefore avoid institutionalization. The PCA waiver program, on the other hand, which is for people under 65, has the same level of care, the same income limit, but it has a very long waiting list. Currently, right now, the people who are being brought onto the PCA waiver program applied in September of 2018. So it's roughly about a 3.5-year waiting list. It has been 4 years, I understand. Many will be institutionalized or they will die waiting. So in terms of a right, well, what kind of right is that? I also want to point out that, some in the past, I'm not sure anybody in this group believes this, but in the past, when efforts were made to do away with waiting lists and provide full funding, people said, well, there's this woodwork effect. Some of the people would not actually go into institutions. So why should we put more money into this program, right? It's going to cost more money. Well, let's just say that were true at all. How do you explain that the CHCP program for people over 65, which has no waiting list, presumably the woodwork effect would apply to them too? So really, there's no justification for continuing to have a waiting list for the program. This has been a real problem all along, but the problem is in sharp relief now because of a different issue. And that this requires going to the weeds just a little bit, and bear with me. Most of you know that during the public health emergency declared by the feds, states are not allowed to terminate people from Medicaid in order to get the higher bump up. We get an extra 6.2%. And the only reason you can terminate somebody from Medicaid off of benefits is that they voluntarily get off benefits or they leave the state or they die. That's the federal statute, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or Families First Act. But Connecticut is proceeding to cut people off of Husky D anyway, right now, regularly. And they're doing this because the Trump administration on its way out issued an interim final rule, which in our view violates the statute and says, well, even though the statute says you have to keep people on the same benefits they were on throughout the public health emergency still in effect, there's an exception if the person goes on to one of the Medicare savings programs, which, as you all know, is a very, very limited program. It just covers cost sharing under Medicare. It doesn't cover anything else. But that's what the reg that was adopted by the Trump administration put into effect. And therefore, DSS, in accordance with that, what we think is an illegal regulation, is terminating people right now. And the relevance of this to the PCA waiver and the PCA waiver waiting list is that a lot of the people who are being terminated are actually receiving home care services under Medicaid through Community First Choice. They're at the Husky D income level, right? 138% of poverty. And so they're being cut off of Husky D, saying, well, you will have Medicare savings program, so that's good enough. And, oh, by the way, if you don't like that, maybe you can spend down to Husky C. Husky C has a much, much lower income level. Spending down is just about impossible for most people in this situation. So the result is they're losing all of their Medicaid, and they're losing Community First Choice, meaning they're losing essential home care services, which they're getting based upon a finding they would otherwise go into a nursing home. So this is all happening right now to real people. And so some of them are wisely being told, apply for the PCA waiver program. Guess what's happening when they apply? In addition to some due process violations, if they apply and if there's a response, there's often not any response at all. But when there is a response, they're told, yeah, it's like 3.5 years. Right now, it's 3.5, 4 years. So if there was no waiting list, people would get on it right away. The right that somebody mentioned earlier, it'd be a right, they could go on it, they would avoid institutionalization. These unreasonably long waiting lists, in our view, violate the integration mandate of the Americans with Disabilities Act. You all talked about Olmstead at the beginning, how this is all driven by Olmstead. That's right. And Olmstead says, while states can have waiting lists and waiver programs, they have to move people along at a reasonable pace. I doubt anybody in this meeting would agree that 3.5 years is a reasonable pace. It's completely unacceptable. And although under the ADA, there's an exception that the state doesn't have to change things if it would be a fundamental alteration. Well, since under the home care program for elders, there's no waiting list at all, can't see how it's a fundamental alteration to get rid of the waiting list for PCA. I do want to be clear that we've done a demand letter about this to be sent on Monday. Dawn got a copy of it. I don't know if anybody else has seen it. On behalf of 2 specific individuals in this very situation. They've been cut off of Husky D on the grounds that they have Medicare savings program, which means they're losing all of they have lost all of their Medicaid coverage. They've been told to go spend down. They can't spend down, and therefore they don't have home care services, and they're immediately threatened with institutionalization right now. So the demand letter says please put these people on so they don't get sent to a nursing home or possibly die. One of the people fell and there was nobody there to, do anything about it because she doesn't have her PCA anymore. Please put these two people on benefits right away, effective by tomorrow. But the rest of the letter talks about the bigger issues. And that's really the issue I'm talking to you about today, which is the PCA waiver waiting list. And I just heard, again, Melissa said, you don't do advocacy, so maybe I'm talking to the wrong people, but I suspect that individually, some of you care about this, maybe care about it a lot. And it may be something that apart from this group, folks may want to work on to really do away with this, really. And I think it's fair to say it's an odious waiting list whose utility has long since been demonstrated to be inappropriate. It's time to open things up the way the CHCP program is. So that is my rant for the day. If you have any questions, happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Sheldon. Yes, I think, like Melissa pointed out, it may be outside of the direct purview and jurisdiction of the Workforce Council, but certainly helpful from a situational awareness perspective. And like you mentioned, all of us wear individualized hats in state agencies or in advocacy groups or as representatives of different communities. So it's helpful. I want you to know that we appreciate the fact that you flagged this and you talk through it. I know with the wind down of the public health emergency, things like this will start to impact the folks that we work on representing in the PCA space. So I do appreciate that feedback and the update that you gave us today.
Thank you.
Right, then seeing no other public comment, I will ask for a motion to go into an executive session.
So moved.
Thanks, Dawn moved. Do I have a second?
Kathy seconds.
Thank you, Kathy, for seconding. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, we will move into executive session then. Melissa, do you want to